Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us today in class. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Bradley is engineering the broadcast at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. And if you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up and running, 605-477-3249. Gwyneth Isaacs, who is normally with us on Wednesdays, will be back in a couple weeks. She's having problems with her landline, her telephone line in Australia. It's not working. It should be available in a couple of weeks when she will be back with us. With us today, Rich Scheben, off-grid Montana, or as our detractors would say, or spell it, off-grid Montana. Welcome, Rich.
Thank you, Vince. How are you doing today?
You know what? Very well. Since we had a chance to chat about our detractors yesterday, we haven't had one single negative comment from the detractors. I think they realize that we really are on their side, and they decided that maybe they should start learning how to be self-sufficient, how to prepare, how to be frugal, rather than just be on the attack for attack's sake. Maybe they realize that it's really, they're on the wrong team and they switched to our side. Wouldn't that be nice?
Mm-hmm. Hey, Vince, just so you know, again, you're coming in poor, and I don't know if it's my phone or your end, but I just wanted to let Bradley, the engineer, be aware of that. And secondly, to comment on what you just said, I'm kind of disappointed. I like the negative comments from the detractors because it shows that we are flying over the target, because the 98% of these detractors are bots, are paid-for trolls by the elite, because it wakes people up, and this is what I mean. We are here to help the little guy. We are here to give ideas and solutions to the bottom 93% of income earners. We are here to wake up the public to the fact that the elite are distracting, dumbing down, and dividing us by groups. If there's a group of two people, they will use taxpayer money to take advantage of any crisis and divide us. It's just like I'm on Breitbart News right now. Representative Steve Cohen implies Trump's audience is similar to the KKK. Well, how many times and Carol Swain from PragerU, Dinesh D'Souza, Candace Owens, there's so many great speakers who talk about this on a regular basis. The KKK was started by the Democrat Party. Okay, Hillary Clinton's mentor, Senator Byrd, that's right, senator from our Congress, was in the hierarchy of the KKK. Carol Swain will explain to you that we have amendments in the Constitution to free slaves, to give them gun rights to protect themselves, to let women vote. All agreed. The Republican Party passed these amendments. The Democrats all said no for this stuff. This is one of the reasons why there's a Brexit campaign being done by Candace Owens right now. So, Candace, you go for it. You're awesome. Keep waking up the people, because it's much less of a left-right paradigm than it is a aristocracy managing and controlling the serfs, especially in this false, artificial economy that we have. Vince?
Well, I probably shouldn't say this, but I will. You mentioned KKK. Well, we study history here at the Finelli household, and we have military uniforms that were used, that were purchased by our family at military type events. So I'm talking like World War I. I have a doughboy hat. I have a Luftwaffe helmet. We have, medals, honors, men's stick pins that have like the Ford logo, the Ford oval, blue oval with the script word Ford in it, attached side by side with the Nazi swastika, a stick pin saying, we're in this together. So we have that. We have just a couple of uniforms, Army, Navy, Marines from the United States, from the Third Reich, from Russia, and we have a costume. We have a KKK costume that was from a guy. We have the documents from it from 1929. So it was old, and it was an Imperial Wizard costume. We have a lot of books in our house about history. We have hundreds and hundreds of books on the wars, the Great Wars, World War I, World War II. We have a kill book from Vietnam, from a sniper who gave it to us. We have historical artifacts, in safekeeping. So if our house burns down, they'll be okay. But we've collected these things over the years, not because we like the Nazis or look up to them or the Russians or anybody else or the KKK, not because of that, but because it proves that these things these aren't just imagined things, imagined groups, imagined conflicts, imagined wars. These were real. We have death cards, also known as funeral cards. So if you go to a funeral, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe even the 80s and 90s, there'd be a little card the size of a playing card, and it would have some religious theme on one side and something about the deceased on the other side. Well, we have thousands of them from World War II, from the Third Reich. And if you see them, you'll realize that the Third Reich, the Nazis, were not atheists. They were Christians. Why? Because there's Mary, there's Jesus, there's the cross on one side. And in a photograph or an image, that was a photograph of the deceased when he was in his finest military uniform, before he got killed. Yeah, absolutely true. We even have plates that were used to make those funeral cards. We have plates from the War of Northern Aggression, way back then. So we have a number of these things, and we've considered them worthy of spending very hard-earned funds on to document the path through which history has taken. So if people say, did it really happen? We can say, yeah, it actually did happen. Our son has been to Auschwitz, and he saw the ruins. We have a sign in porcelain. I bought it at a gun show a couple decades ago. It's a porcelain sign, and it was on the outside of one of these death camps, and I'm not going to mention which one, where people were confined inside to hard labor, and many were executed at these death camps controlled by the Third Reich. And the sign has a lightning bolt on it. The sign is white porcelain, black letters, with a red lightning bolt. And it's about the size of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And in the language of the sign, which is not English, it says, don't touch the wires. You can be electrocuted. And that's to keep people from prying in to the death camps. So when you wonder if those concentration camps are real, yeah, they were real. We have a piece of, I won't even say what it is, historical artifact from one of those death camps, one of the pieces of construction material used. I'm not going to say which one either. But what you're saying is absolutely right. And man has been horrible to his fellow man. Did you see President Donald Trump, last night? Did you see that? What he said? They called it a speech. I would call it an address. Did you see that, Rich Scheben?
I did, and I'm reading a lot of comments on the internet on how disappointing it was.
What?
And
are you serious?
In the fact that he didn't create a national emergency out of it. I mean,
okay,
he said
I agree.
The right things.
He
agreed. He should have taken it to that next level. Let me just. Can I take about 5 minutes and just mention some facts? Okay,
sure,
and
please
there's some really great facts here. Okay, first of all, as you know, what we try and do, Vince, is protect the little guy who has no protection under the law, no restitution under the law. And I have an article here that says Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said in 2009 that construction of hundreds of miles of fencing along the southern border made the border far more secure because it created a significant barrier to illegal immigration. Schumer made the remarks while addressing the 6th Annual Immigration Law and Policy Conference of Georgetown University about the 7 principles, he said, that were the basis of an immigration reform package that he wanted to pass. The first 7 of these principles, that illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple, unquote. When we use phrases like undocumented workers, we convey a message to the American people that the government is not serious about combating illegal immigration, which the American people overwhelmingly oppose.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us. Rich, please continue.
Yeah, thank you. Let me finish Schumer's quote. Quote, people who enter the United States without permission are illegal aliens, and illegal aliens should not be treated the same way as people who enter the United States legally, Schumer continued. And I'm quoting again, any immigration solution must recognize that we do as much as we can to gain operational control of its borders as soon as possible. And let me go over some facts. They did a lot of fact-checking with what President Trump said yesterday, and everything he said was 100% correct. But see, the left, just like these quotes from Schumer, basically all they do is foment hate, create race wars. We have a national emergency, but the Democrats want these people to be voters for their party. That's basically what it is. It's about creating chaos, creating infighting, and basically not having synergy in our country. And nobody I know is against immigration. Everybody I know is against not vetting the immigrants, not bringing in unskilled workers or criminals. And there's so many, like President Trump said yesterday, we have a ton of criminals here. We have thousands of Americans killed every year by illegal aliens. We have over 900,000 convicted illegal felons roaming the streets. We have much more crimes that are committed against the poor and middle class, a.k.a. bottom 93%. Car insurance, public education, and health care. Those of you who are listening to this show, you're being cost-shifted to oblivion because you're paying for all these 20 million-plus illegal immigrants that we have in our country who drive cars, who can literally walk away from an accident with no consequences. Here's another quote. We are sending a clear message Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean that child can stay, unquote. That is a quote from Hillary Clinton. This is, you got to stop thinking this left-right paradigm. It's all about marketing. It's all about theater. It's all about swaying public opinion, manufacturing perception, pity, guilt, and ideology in order to hold the narrative, the memes, themes, talking points, to benefit the people. It's race baiting. It's divide and conquer. That's their destruction flowchart that the Democrats use, because the Democrats are not the Democrats. They are globalists. They get their funding from the richest people in the world. Look at all the proponents, folks, who talk about, who calls everybody like Cohen did, that I just mentioned a few moments ago, KKK. Trump voters are KKK. Well, they're racist, they're bigot. All these words that don't even have meaning anymore, that you've heard me say for years, like controversial, extremist, racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, conspiracy theorist, intolerant, violent hater, with an ism and ist in back of every word, and a phobia in the back of every word, and an anti in front of every word. That's what they do. That's all they do is name calling. They don't do anything to benefit the little people. The divide of inequality between the super wealthy and everybody else is going to oblivion. And that's one of the reasons I want to give an Economic 101 update today, Vince, before we run out of time, which we usually do. But I'm not even done on my high horse here. Robotics, automation, artificial intelligence is supposed to take millions of jobs. This is going to be such a burden on the middle class, which is shrinking rapidly. According to the Congressional Budget Office, 1 in 5 illegal aliens go on food stamps, especially if they approve DACA amnesty. Non-citizens, federal government backs, account for 22%, more than one-fifth of all federal murder convictions, 18% of fraud, 33% of money laundering, 29% of drug trafficking, and 72% of convictions for drug possession, paid for by the American taxpayer. If you don't put into the kitty, you shouldn't take out of the kitty. Okay? 80% of illegal children enter the U.S. without their parents. But they say all these kids are being put in cages. And a lot of these kids are actually adults. Trump talked about that last night, where a lot of these so-called children are gang members, like MS-13. And again, he doesn't want to shut down the borders. He just wants to vet skill sets. More than half of foreign refugees on taxpayer-funded food stamps. 1 in 3 caravan, quote, migrants have some deadly disease. 1 in 3, HIV, AIDS, hepatitis, tuberculosis, etc. 63% of citizens on welfare food stamps, almost 5 million households. Programs are used to help ailing American citizens. 63% of non-citizens on welfare and food stamps. This is why we need top-down funding. All these gazillionaires who are talking about opening up our borders, let's let them live in their houses. Let's take their net worth.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Yeah, Rich Sheben's with us, off-grid Montana. Rich, please continue.
Yeah, well, I stopped before the break on how we need top-down funding. And what I mean by that is all the frickin' big mouths, all the gazillionaires, the multimillionaires, the billionaires, who we've been talking about things like self-sufficiency preparedness schools for years, Vince. You think somebody, one of these greedy bastards, would step up to the plate and they can write a check. They can literally write a check to help out the little people, but they don't give a damn about the little people. So what we need is top-down funding. We need to have all these big mouths, whether it be Washington, D.C., lawyers, judges, bankers, all the big wigs, all the middle management goons who have done everything to distract, dumb down, and divide the American people by groups to pay and fund for all this stuff. And we need to start taking their net worth, okay? I think if you have under, say, $3 million of net worth, you shouldn't even have to pay taxes. Let these big mouths who funnel money from the bottom 93% to eliminate the middle class pay for all this. This is practice what you preach laws, which we talk about all the time. Most organizations represent the wealthy. That's why when they use class envy as an excuse, okay, as a reason for why people are saying stuff, which I've basically debunked that about 1,000 times over the years. It's totally false and phony. The lawyers and the judges who allow illegal immigration, who do crimes against the American people, should be swiped clean of all net worth, and all that money goes to the families and the victims. That's what should be happening. We spend about $1.5 billion a year for illegal immigration. Think about that. The wall, and I'm being conservative with this, I've seen numbers that we could pay for the wall in 3 months. Basically, we the people have no representation, no rights, no protection, and no restitution under the rule of law. We no longer have a rule of law because the pussies at the top, especially our politicians, and I say pussies, don't give a damn about the people. All they care about is feathering their own nest and their addiction to power, money, and control. Vincent?
Couple comments. Please be careful with the words you use. But I do have some comments. The farmers are allegedly being impacted severely by this partial government shutdown. News articles are saying that farmers need to buy expensive seed, expensive fertilizer, and expensive chemicals. The USDA, pronounced USDA, is not operational because it's considered not essential, so farm loans are not being processed. I don't borrow money for our farm. We've done it the hard way. We've built up reserves so that we can buy what we need when we need it. Farmers who don't do that are not planning. They depend on the government corporation system in order to get loans. They should have been thinking about this kind of thing a long time ago. As one farmer to another, I'd have to say that I believe farmers are making mistakes by borrowing. I see farmers with great big, nice, painted, brand new, green John Deere tractors, and I go to my family, are we doing something wrong? Those guys have new tractors. Actually, they're borrowing money to buy them. We don't do that. We drive rust-colored tractors. They work. And we're not in a position where we have to borrow money to stay afloat, to keep our farm running. Now, we do need rain. We do need moisture. But we have planned it so that we are not at the mercy of government corporations. Next thing. The government, by the way, this is good news for those who want to eat without chemicals, because the chemicals are expensive that the farmers have been conned into spraying on their fields. So maybe we'll have less Roundup in our air, in our water, in our food, which may be an unintended consequence or benefit from the partial government shutdown. Now, there are other unexpected consequences of this partial government shutdown, by the way, which I support the shutdown. One of them is that foot traffic on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. is down about 60%. Well, there's a story of this guy who runs a food stand. I don't even know if food is the right word. He sells hot dogs and snacks. He pays $525 every 3 months for permission from the city-state of Washington, D.C. for the license to sell snacks and hot dogs. Foot traffic is down so much that if this continues 2 to 3 months, he's going to have to do something else, like get a job or start up another business. Stores in the area are faced with layoffs, and they have laid off people because the foot traffic is down, and people who have been laid off aren't spending money because they're not at work. Well, these people have been deemed non-essential. If they're non-essential, why are they there? Why were they there? Why were they there in the first place? I saw President Donald Trump on his address live on the internet, and I clicked, and we were directed to CNN. So we watched We watch those guys. Obviously, CNN is not a friend of Donald Trump. Well, I read a book that Donald Trump wrote with another author in 1987. 1987. It's called The Art of the Deal. These Washington swamp members don't realize, if they haven't read his book, Donald Trump is in for the long run. He is a master negotiator. He knows how to do this. Now, was I disappointed that he didn't declare a national emergency? Well, I know why he didn't. Because if he did declare a national emergency, the other team would bring this national emergency to court and probably undo it with some unknown, unheard of judge. So to prevent that from happening, Donald Trump, in my opinion, did not declare a national emergency. I heard the Dems, as in Deese, Does, and Dem Guys, mention that they want to stop the shutdown. My response is absolutely not. Do not stop the shutdown. The Dems are saying stop the shutdown and then we'll talk about the wall. Really? The shutdown is the maximum leverage at this point that President Donald Trump, in my opinion, can use to get the wall. Do I want the wall? Absolutely. Does Barry Soetoro have a wall around his house? I'm talking about Barack Obama and Michael Obama and the children, if they happen to be there. They've got a wall. Does Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of New York City, does he carry a gun? No, he carries with him about 5 armed guards to protect him. He doesn't need to carry a gun. He carries 5 guys with him with guns, probably submachine guns under their coats. Do people like the wealthy have walls around their house? Yes. And Donald Trump mentioned that walls keep people in. Okay, we have walls or fences keep people in. We have fences around our farm. Why? Because it keeps the cows in. And it's a deterrent to people who want to poach on our farm. It's a great way to go. We have it. Now, did we put it up? No. We bought the farm, and those fences were put in the 1940s. Maybe before that. What a great idea. Did we change the location? No. Because they were put up in the right places originally. We just maintained them. Now we've added internal fencing, electric fencing, and it works great. I support the wall. I have been to the southern border. I've seen the little bit of wall that we have, and it's about, let's say 8 miles long. And then after the 8 miles, and I'm talking about this pipe fence, this pipe wall that you can see through, a young person can shimmy right up that, like he could shimmy up a basketball goal. It's round pipe, just like a basketball goal. Space so that you can't get between it and wiggle your way, between 2 of these steel pipes. But you could shimmy up it if you're healthy and strong and go right over it. But if that's too hard, you just go 4 miles down. If you're in the center of this wall, you go 4 miles in either direction, and then you reach barbed wire. Then either hop over the barbed wire, crawl through the barbed wire, crawl under the barbed wire. What I'm saying is, if you think there's a fence there, the answer is hardly. Hardly to protect our borders. I'd like to talk a little bit about what a CNN commentator said last night. And the emphasis would be on the word common of the word commentator. CNN commentator said that this wall, Trump thinks this wall would be a monument to Donald Trump. Where do they get this stuff? Nancy Pelosi, I got to tell you, she was great. She said that Donald Trump spoke with misinformation and malice. And why did I say Nancy Pelosi was great? Well, I've got a 14-year-old truck that I drive that has a lot of rust on it and missing parts. I would like the name and phone number of the body shop that did the work on Nancy Pelosi's face, because I'd like them to look at my truck and see how they could make my truck look that good. That body shop took an old battleaxe and made it presentable. Nancy Pelosi was a national disgrace last night. Can identify with the Dems. I'm speaking of the Deese, Does, and Dem Guys, Dems, is beyond me. They're advocating making America weaker than Bill the Unzipper Clinton and Barry the Light Loafer guy already made it. Any American who does not want to make America great again is a jerk. Just as anyone who wants the Clinton crime syndicate back in office is also a jerk. And I'm going to define what a jerk is. A jerk is a fool, an idiot, a horse's south side, a half-wit, a nincompoop, a blockhead, a buffoon, a dunce, an ignoramus, a cretin, an imbecile, a dullard, a moron, a simpleton, and a clod. That's what a jerk is. And anyone who supports not making America great again is a jerk. And if you're one of those, I suggest you please switch that dial. We don't want you here. We want America to be great again and rebuild what the Clinton crime syndicate and the Soetoro crime syndicate has done to us. If you wonder where your jobs went, that's where they went. And the Dems are saying that Donald Trump is causing you to miss your payments. Absolutely not. It's the Dems who will not let him protect us from crime, from people who want to invade the United States. They are causing the problem, not President Donald Trump. And I think that Donald Trump was superb and spectacular last night. And I think Nancy Pelosi was awful. She was atrocious. She was evil. And if you didn't see that, something's wrong. Rich?
Well, if we continue to be hyphenated Americans, hyphenated by skin pigmentation shade, gender, sex, sexual orientation, religion, and ideology, as long as we allow the race baiting to occur by the bought and paid for media, we are going to be our own worst enemy. We are allowing the elites to poison us against ourselves. And this is why I get so ticked off when I see the middle class losing so much ground. Because it's mostly done through not just economics, but divide and conquer strategies, which are indirectly related to your pocketbook. Meaning that they want to make you submissive, break your will, reward mediocrity, which eliminates productivity and opportunity for the mass, great mass of people, we the people. And it's very discouraging when you see how Congress doesn't stick up for the little people. They just stick up for their funders, their special interest groups, their PACs, their lobbyists. Seems like everybody is bought and paid for, and nobody is paying attention to the eradication of the middle class. They call it populism. I guarantee you, in a few years, you'll be calling it survivalism, because this is done. Nothing is done by accident. Everything is done in a planned way, just like planned obsolescence. As we talk about that a lot on this show with products and goods and services. Everything is made to disintegrate. Everything is made to make the little people the consumer. And until we stick together, we're not going to have a middle class. When the middle class goes, it's going to be directly proportional to our freedoms, our liberty, our rule of law, and our ability to control our own destiny.
Wow. You know what, Rich? I've noticed that we're angry about this. We're angry about what's happening. I just hear it in our voices and the tone. I've got some comments about what we've been talking about. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich Sheben's with us. Federal employees are positioned to lose their paychecks en masse. Good. They're deemed non-essential. If they're non-essential, we don't need them. So let's start firing them all. I support small government. I do not support large government corporations. I support small government, minimum essential government, Thomas Jefferson style government. I was listening to the CNN commentators, with the common being the operative word. They seem to me to be anti-American. They're talking antagonists. These guys couldn't even let the other talking antagonists speak. They had to cut each other off. They would keep interrupting each other, all in the same room. It's not like what happens here at USA Prepares where we can't see each other and we have a varied delay of, let's say, 1.5 seconds, sometimes even more, with the other instructors, or maybe even more than that when we go across the ocean. I looked at the panel of commentators that CNN had for our viewing displeasure. 3 of the commentators were white women. 2 were white men. And 1 of them was a black woman. The black woman's voice had all the qualities of 40 grit sandpaper. She was hard to listen to because of her voice. And you would think that if you're going to be on the big blue screen, you'd be selected for qualities of delivery, intelligence, voice quality, and so forth. She was hard to take. The white women would interrupt each other. What's wrong with them? One of the commentators asked the question, was the president competent? What? Was the president competent? What an atrocious question to ask. Obviously, these guys are anti-President Donald Trump. The question that should have been asked is more like, what is the reason for the existence of the Democrat Party, the party of destruction, the party of demolition, the party of desperation? That's more like the question that should have been asked. Rich Sheben?
Well, it's basically being anti-American. They're trying to control the narrative because they can't compete in the arena of ideas and solutions. Okay? And here's an article that really talks about how they want to use subjective emotional opinion in lieu of objective facts. University of Illinois, however you decide to pronounce it. A math professor is claiming that math, I'm not making this up, this was on the Daily Caller, is promoting white privilege and is racist, including using reason. And anything that needs to be understood needs to be done subjectively, because if it's done with objective facts, it's a microaggression. Look it up. I'm sure you can Google that up. It's when we get to a point where we literally have gone so full speed into stupid, it's very difficult for a lot of people to control their own destiny because they're hearing things that are divide and conquer terms, all under political correctness. Now, I'm not against change when it's for the betterment of the American people, but when it's for the disintegration and divide and conquer of the middle class and bottom 93%, I am definitely not for that change. Now, if it's change for the better, which a lot of Americans are trying to do, like we are with self-sufficiency preparedness schools and standing for principle and practice what you preach laws and all the things that we've talked about over the years, the so-called globalists, the bought and paid for class, don't want a betterment for the American people. They have an addiction to power, money, and control. And here's a great quote from Mark Twain in the beginning of A Change. The patriot is a scarce man and brave and hated and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid join him, and then it costs nothing to be a patriot. The reason why I said that, folks, is because being an American should not be a spectator sport. Not with what's happening, because it's very obvious that the globalist party, posing and disguised as the Democrat Party, is doing everything to destroy our country. And they're using group identity politics. All you have to do is look at the numbers. Look at the math. This is why the representatives of the globalist party want to eliminate math and call it racist, call it white supremacist. You know how ridiculous that sounds? You know how insulting and degrading and disrespectful that is to people who are in these particular groups that this professor says? And I've said this a million times, when you lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job, you destroy America from within, because the appreciation and the value for the job means nothing when you just reward mediocrity and take a whole country and put it into a diminishing returns. Opportunity, knowledge, ingenuity, productivity, and innovation, everything is absent for we the people, for the masses, because you never empower a group or an individual or a nation by lowering the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job. In other words, we are letting the aristocracy dupe us, use us, and play us against each other. And we have to stop being hyphenated Americans and start being Americans, or else we are going to put all the units of measures of despair that we talk about on this show, from drug use to suicides to obesity to psychotropic drugs, all this stuff is going to take especially these young people, out of the game. And they're not going to, even if they survive, they're not going to have a good life. And life should be about happiness. Life should be about helping others. We are all human, which means we're all imperfect sinners. But if you stop having goals and dreams, you stop having happiness. If we allow the powers to be, whatever you want to call them, to eliminate the middle class, then everything in our Bill of Rights, our Constitution, and rule of law will be unnecessary. At least that's what they will say. And we will all be sheeple. We will all be told what to do, what to say, how to think, and how to do it, and who to do it with. We have to fight for this country because we've had millions, at least over 1 million combat soldiers, die for our freedoms and liberty. Young boys, 16, 17-year-old, lie about going into the Army, storming the beaches of Normandy, and they died on those beaches. A lot of these combat soldiers gave their life for false flag wars like the Bay of Tonkin in Vietnam, where we lost around 1,000 soldiers. So we're going to be innocent bystanders and watch what happens and not get involved. We've had over 1 million combat soldiers give their lives for our freedoms and liberty. That's not acceptable. Vincent?
Yeah. We're kind of annoyed today, class, because we're watching the destruction and demolition by the Demolition Party, also known as the Democrat Party, here in the United States. You mentioned math. I married a card-carrying member of the Mathematics Society. Mrs. Finelli is a degreed mathematician. She majored in math. So, math is logic. It's really hard to lie with true math. It really is. Okay. These people who have been selected to represent, allegedly, your interests, support companies like AT&T, T-Mobil, and Sprint. AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint have been selling customer real-time locations to other companies. For example, if someone wants to know where you are, they can find you if you have an AT&T service, a T-Mobile service, or a Sprint service. All the members of the boards of AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint should be immediately fired without compensation, pensions, stock perks, and their credentials should be immediately removed. They are allowing the tracking of you through your cell phone. And you've seen it. You've seen it. You've seen it on television programs, fictitious programs like NCIS, letting you know that they can find you with your cell phone. So, headlines, motherboard. Now, what is a motherboard? A motherboard is the main board in a computer. Okay, so if you open up the chassis of your computer, you'll find the big board in there, and that would be called the motherboard, M-O-T-H-E-R-B-O-A-R-D. Well, attached to the main board or the motherboard are the accessories like the hard drive or the hard drive controller, the video CPU, or the input-output circuitry. All that's connected to the motherboard. Well, there's a website called Motherboard, and headline is T-Mobile, Sprint, and AT&T are selling access to the customer's location data. That data is ending up in the hands of bounty hunters and others not authorized to process it, letting them track most phones in the country. Here's where I have a problem with that. Number one, I don't have a cell phone. I don't have one of those personal tracking devices because I don't want to be personally tracked. I don't want people knowing where I go, how long I spend time there, etc. It's none of their business. So I don't have one of those devices. I used to. That's when I wasn't as knowledgeable about what they were doing as I am now. So here's the problem. I can tell you that when 100% of the people who show up at our farm show up, they bring their cell phones. What are they thinking? So I've got to put the sign back up. And you know what? This is a barrier to entry. People are going to be frosted with me because I'm going to say, well, you can come here, but you may not bring your cell phone on this property. If you want to leave it outside the gate, that's up to you. But you may not bring it on our property. And I'm serious about that. You know, it's offensive to me that someone would have the nerve to bring a cell phone, a tracking device, a device that can be turned on and off remotely without anyone's knowledge, which can pick up video and audio in my home. So people may think that I'm being over the top with this policy that I have of not allowing a cell phone on our property. They may say, well, Vinny, look, I need it for my business. I got to have it. Okay, you can have it. That's up to you, but not on my property. I'm angry about this. I'm angry about the GDP, the generally dumb public, who allow their tracking devices in their homes and insist that they bring them into our home. And what is the first thing that a person does when they come into your house with their cell phone? Their cell phone is in one of two places, in their hand or in their pocket. And when they sit at your kitchen table and you offer them a cup of coffee, what's the first thing they do? They take that darn thing out of their pocket. And where do they put it? On the kitchen table, where it is perfect for the listening and viewing pleasure of whoever those perverts are that want to peep over the fence, those peeping Toms. What are people thinking? It bothers me. And the Alexa and Echo bother me because I don't want to go in someone's house when that person is so ignorant that they buy an Alexa because they can't bother to get up off their rear ends and turn the light switch on. Really? This is nuts. It's nuts to have a refrigerator plugged into the internet. So if you are fortunate enough to have a slave job where the government steals, probably the government corporations combined steal maybe 3/4 of your wages, and you have one of these jobs where you sit down and enter other people's data, like make appointments and things like that, and you call that a job, so you can turn up or down the temperature in your refrigerator? Really? Does that make any sense? This is nuts. And people are so ignorant, they're buying into it. I'd love to hear Rich Scheben's comments about this when we come back. I haven't been this angry in a long time. Just watching the demolition party destroying our country, invading our homes, spying on our every move, putting cameras on every corner. None of this would be possible without the blessing, the approval, and the encouragement of these trashy people, these traitors. They are traitors to we, the villagers of America. They think it's great. They allow the toxic destruction, chemical pollution, polluting the oceans, polluting space, the dispersion of radioactivity. They allow this. They encourage this. They support this. And we're supposed to look up to them? I despise them. They want to hurt you and me, our children, our parents, our friends, everyone we know and people we don't know. And if that's not good enough, they want to create weapons and bombs to blow them up. People we don't even know. Why? What does it take to be this evil? It's foreign to me. Rich?
Well, we have to remember that if being objective and using objective facts is now racist, and 2 + 3 = 7, and pi doesn't equal 3.14, And a federal paycheck can now be worth $1 a week because cardinal numbers no longer matter because it's subjective. You know, as we move into this 1984 Orwellian twilight zone, we have to remember that these people, big tech. Now, I know I've had this conversation with other people on other radio shows and even off the air. You know, well, people say, well, our young are desensitized. You know, they're sexting all the time. The average American starts watching porn at the age of 11. There's no inhibitions anymore. They just don't care. You know, and I hear that. But we have to remember, and I've said this several times before, big tech, whether it be phone companies or Google or Facebook or Twitter, it doesn't matter. You have to remember that you are the product. We are the product. The advertisers, the corporations, the big governments, they are the customer. We are now living in a virtual reality self-incrimination station and indoctrination station. That's why there's no customer service, accountability, transparency anymore. Because we have been groomed and cultivated to accept it. So, as the middle class disintegrates, as the elite use divide and conquer strategies on us, as the game gets more and more rigged with central bank corrupt monetary policies, Keynesian economics, anything goes, and going into our present demographic situation where through 2050, the largest group of growth will be the older people. As we run into unstable economic headwinds with future rates of growth that can only occur if it's manipulated and corrupted, with our debt situation, global corporate household, and government promises, as the authoritarian class, the bought and paid for class, gets stronger and blackmails the people into subserviency, how are we going to survive? How are we going to get food that's not GMO, full of hormones, steroids, antibiotics, and pesticides? If the fascist system that we are in, which we've been in for like the last 20 years, is just getting worse, where big government protects the big corporate oligarchies, and the rule of law no longer matters because the Monsantos of the world could say that glyphosate, a.k.a. Roundup, doesn't cause cancer. So we're going to declassify it, we're going to fight it in court, and we're going to do some professional wordsmithing to change that. What happens when we can't make a living because hard work, effort, proven results, qualifications, and criteria of that like no longer matter? What are we going to do? What are your kids and grandkids going to do? And at the risk of being redundant, just remember the million-plus combat soldiers who gave their life for our future. So we're just going to forget about the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the rule of law, just so we don't have any flack? Are we going to lose all of our courage that built our country, that gave our freedoms, our liberties to us by these combat soldiers? Again, wars that shouldn't even been fought because they were produced by false flags in order to benefit the hierarchy of the military-industrial complex and the bankers. So what are we going to do? If we can't control our own destiny, if objective facts no longer matter, if the powers that be can say anything that they want in order to sway public opinion and divide us by groups and manufacture perception, pity, and guilt and race bait all the way around the block, while each group is being insulted, degraded, and disrespected regarding their work ethic, their ability, their intelligence, how are we going to survive? See, populism isn't populism. All these words have been professionally wordsmithed so they can be basically swatted at and made derogatory by the elite class. Please stop thinking it's so much a left-right paradigm. It's way more the aristocracy managing and controlling the serfs. And if we can't use objective facts, if we can't use common sense, if we can't use logic, then it's all over. The middle class, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, freedom, liberty, everything's gone. Vince?
Okay, so I was thinking about what you're saying, and I had to look this up because I've never been into a Starbucks. So Starbucks has several sizes of cups for their coffees. They have the short, which is 8 ounces, a tall, which is 12 ounces, a grande, which is 16 ounces, a vende, which is 20 ounces, and an ice vende, which is 24 ounces. So a guy walks in and says to the coffee jerk, may I have a tall, which is a 12-ounce coffee? And the coffee jerk fills it up halfway, sells it to the customer, and the customer says, yo, whoa, I paid for a 12-ounce. This has about half of that in there. Actually, there's less coffee in here than in the short 8-ounce coffee cup. And the coffee jerk says, well, not to me. Not to me because, I think it's full.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about, that's what you're saying.
Yep.
You're saying anything goes.
Yep.
Anything goes. You go into the restaurant and you order a 12-ounce steak. You think that that's going to be a lot to eat, but that's what you want. And you get this little thing and you call the waiter over and you go, yo, what is this? This thing's the size of an ice cube. And I ordered a 12-ounce steak. What happened? He goes, well, not to me. That is a 12-ounce steak to me. Because I don't know much about math. I never paid attention. I'm living in the basement of my parents' house.
And Vince, if I may interject, please, this is the same philosophy or strategy that's being used to measure our economy. Unemployment numbers, GDP numbers, CPI and inflation numbers, yield curve, everything, and we've talked about this over the years in great detail. The calculations and unit of measures are being changed. So if everything gets recalculated and they use different units of measures, they can make anything look good. The economy, anything. They can control every narrative, theme, meme, or talking point without using common sense or logic. And this is what is happening in America.
Yeah, so we have a partial federal government shutdown, and the foot traffic is down in Washington, D.C. And this guy's hot dog stand is going to go belly up.
I like that. I'm going to have to use
because
that.
Because he can't afford to pay.
Pardon me, I got to use
Washington, D.C.?
I like that, yeah.
Well, I've been using that for years. That's what it is. It's a liar's, it's the epicenter of lies, cheats, deception, obfuscation, manipulation, and thuggery, as well as, perversion, all kinds of ilks. And if you go into Washington, D.C., you will see cars banged up in a way you've never seen them banged up before. I understand that accidents happen. I understand that people are careless. I understand that people are reckless. But in Washington, D.C., there's a special kind of driver. And here's what he and she, here's what they do. So you are behind one of these people. They're looking in their rearview mirror and you go, you know what, there's 2 lanes. I think I'm going to pass them. I'll just overtake them in the left lane. And you can. It's perfectly legal. It's not like passing on the right. It's legal because you're in your own lane. You're just going a little faster than they are. They go, oh, no, you're not. And they quickly jerk the steering wheel and pull into your lane. And you ram into them. Got a quick announcement, class. On Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m., that's this Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time, I will be on John Statmiller's broadcast. Steve Elkins, another broadcaster, will be there, so it'll be fun. There'll be 3 broadcasters all on the radio at the same time on Republic Broadcasting Network, so you can tune in. One other comment, I mentioned these right front quarter paddle accidents, and that's because these people in Washington, D.C., if they're in the left lane, they'll make a right turn across the right lane, and you crash into them if you're behind them because you don't expect them to jerk the wheel so quickly. They don't use signals because if they do, you'll know what their intention is. They are determined to stay in front of you, and they are first. They are the most important parasite in their own mind. George in New Hampshire, welcome.
Hi, Vincent. Hi, Rick.
Hey, George.
Hi. I just wanted to weigh in on what you were saying. Have you noticed that when the Republicans win and they sweep the House, not too many things really change? And then when the Democrats come in, it kind of seems like each side, they do so much. I know there's certain checks and blocks, but there's one other thing I wanted to weigh in on, and that is that, maybe I'm not allowed to mention the insurance company, but I remember many years ago.
No, go ahead. Mention them.
Okay, it was Geico, and they had a commercial that would come across the radio that would be around this time of the year, wintertime, and it would say that power lines were down, there's a weather alert, be careful, it's very hazardous outside, and you look out the window and it wasn't. And what it was that they were just trying to get your attention, suck you in long enough. So I started tracking down Geico contact, and I contacted them one step at another step, and it was lengthy. And it got to a point where I called them. I said, this is irresponsible. I said, if there's a mother and a father have children out there, they're going to be worried sick because they're going to think power lines down, hazardous conditions. But they were making it sound like, in other words, it was like near-apocalypse conditions. So I finally tracked it back. You know where they're located? They're located on a major boulevard very close to the power center in Washington, D.C. And all I'm saying is that these things are scripted. They were doing that maybe, say, 10 years ago. Eventually they took it off, whether it was because of people like myself calling in or whatnot. But what I'm saying is that so many things now are scripted, where, in other words, it's almost like the Yankees and the Red Sox, or Billie Jean King versus Bobby, whatever his name, and they played it up. I remember I was in the military, I was out in California. They played it up like it was men against women, male chauvinism against feminism. And what I'm saying, I think we're in some grand illusionary situation where I don't even think a lot of people can really even hear you, Vincent, or hear you, Rich, when you're talking sense. Because if you ask them to repeat what you said or understand what you said, they'd give you a facsimile of what you said, missing probably 50% of the intention and the understanding of it. I don't know if you found this to be true, but I know Vincent in your meeting.
I think it. Oh yeah, I think it's absolutely true. And George, so Geico, that's spelled G-E-I-G-E-I-C-O, and the GEI stands for Government Employees Insurance. The CO stands for Company, Government Employees Insurance Company. That's what Geico was. And you used to have to be a government employee in order to get insurance from Geico. But that's changed. I don't believe that's true anymore. So it used to be government employees and military personnel only, period. It was a closed club, but I don't think it is anymore.
Well,
George,
I
you
never
mentioned
knew that it was government. Sorry.
Yeah, George, you mentioned that the Republicans, when they have the House and the Senate, they don't get anything done. That's because the left-right paradigm is not as accurate as people think. And the little people just don't have any representation anymore. We get the propaganda, the lies, and the false flag, and that's all we get.